And we continue with reaction on the GDP second quarter numbers. I'm now joined by Sandile Zungu, who is the Black Business Council President. Very good afternoon to you. Good to be chatting with you once again. But perhaps let's go straight into the thick of things. How has black business been affected in this particular quarter? I mean, we've seen the figures coming out, a contraction of 51%. But how much of that has actually affected black business?
While 51% contraction is massive, I must tell you that I was expecting far worse than that. And this is understandable because the economy had pretty much ground to a screeching halt through lockdown mechanisms. So no surprise there. But what it harbors is the fact that we are in pre-COVID-19 recession and we are in a junk status. Those are the realities that we have to work ourselves out of. Black business was severely affected. You'll remember that most of the SMMEs were crying out very loud that they have no breathing space. And pretty much it continues till today. And black business in the hospitality sector will have been severely affected, notwithstanding a whole lot of measures in terms of relief that were announced. Those in the manufacturing sector were not different to what we see as contraction spearheaded by iron engineering, machining. Because a lot of SMME or small players who are black are in that machining space, in the engineering sector, so they'll have been severely affected. It's not just about township economy. It goes across the sector. And the ones that will have survived, quite a few of them will have been in the mining space. There are many contractors who are supplying coal to Eskom. As you know, Eskom was not subject to a shutdown or a lockdown, so they continued to thrive under those circumstances. But those are outliers rather than the mainstream.
Mr. Zungu, exactly 2 months ago, you told Newsroom Africa that you believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually cost the South African economy 1 million jobs. That was 2 months ago. Are you still of that view? And currently today, as we get this data in from SSA, what do you see the numbers going? Where do you see the numbers going, rather, when it comes to the number of jobs that have been lost since April?
You know, I like Malulega's response that he does not rely on throwing bones. He measures things. So let's not cast a crystal ball view on jobs lost. But it is our estimated guess, so it's a very well calculated guess that by the end of this calendar year, more than 1.5 million jobs will have been lost in the economy.
And when it comes to the 1.5 million jobs, which sectors are you most concerned about when you look at the data that came out today?
The sectors that will have lost jobs, are quite varied. There is no doubt that in the hospitality sector, tourism sector, a lot of jobs will have been shed, and sadly, those tend to be low-skilled jobs, and where greater flexibility is sometimes also had, because when people are hosting events and weddings, they call people in the neighborhood who can assist with their preparations for such. But when the hospitality sector is shut down to the extent that it is now, those people have lost their jobs. And it's guesswork whether they will regain the jobs when the hospitality industry really gets back to normalcy. Other sectors in the manufacturing space severely affected. And in the engineering space, it's a bloodbath. You ask ITC, who are number one lenders or funders of engineering companies, how many of those jobs are in business rescue? And how many of those jobs did not reopen when we got into level 2? It's quite a lot of them. chemical sector. I mean, there's no sector which is immune to this bloodbath. Even the agro-processing sector. We hear of vineyards which have been rendered useless simply because, to reopen would take massive investment by entrepreneurs, and they're not prepared to take that kind of risk. So it's been a bloodbath, and it cannot be underestimated, therefore, that the need for government and business and other social partners, including labor, to work together to get this economy out of the doldrums that we find ourselves in cannot be overemphasized. It's very important.
And touching upon that, the narrative now is to start putting the economy back together again, to start reinvigorating and renewing and reviving the economy, even though we still are effectively still under lockdown and there are still some sectors that are shut down. In your view, the measures that are being put in place now, do they suffice in reinvigorating the economy?
Well, let's start by praising South African people for being resilient. Even though we're still in a lockdown level 2, even though we're still releasing second quarter numbers which are tragic, people are now looking beyond the current. They're beginning to redesign the new economy that we imagined. So when you talk about measures that have been taken, you talk about relief schemes like 500 billion rands that was announced by government. One of the biggest criticisms is the uptake of this loan guarantee scheme, which is underpinned by a guarantee by Treasury, but which is rolled out by commercial banks. The fact that 200 billion rands of what was set aside, only 15 billion rands has been taken up. You could spend it whichever way you want, but it's terrible because the economy needs this money. So are measures enough? We believe that the efficacy of measures is not optimal. The numbers may be quite impressive, but the rolling out and the implementation, once again, that bugbear of South Africa, which is implementation. We've got many great schemes and policies, but we are very terrible as a nation in terms of implementation. It's not just limited to government, also, as you can see now, with commercial banks just failing to roll out 200 billion rands to the businesses that really need it. If you look at other relief measures in the tourism space, in the SMME space, the ones that are being rolled out by IDC, we believe that there's not enough being made available to those businesses. More could be advanced in that respect. If you look at the township economy, to what extent hawkers in the township, people who are running B&Bs in the township, shisanyamas and car washes, which are thriving businesses. The extent to which they are getting the relief and help, it leaves much to be desired. So the whole package of getting the economy back on the grind leaves much to be desired. But there are critical discussions that are taking place right now. Critical among the social partners, which give anyone who is involved there a lot of hope. For example, the rolling out and the auctioneering or auctioning, as well as the creation of a wholesale open access network in the telecom space. Advanced discussions are taking place. It's got to happen if we're going to see this country becoming a real player in fourth industrial revolution, whether it's Internet of Things or machine learning, where young entrepreneurs who have got big dreams can have access to affordable data. So a lot of other wonderful things are happening, but not fast enough, unfortunately.
The two issues that you've mentioned, Mr. Zungu, when it comes to the 200 billion rand bank guarantee scheme, one of the issues is that the black business, is finding it too, stringent to actually get this money. That's why 15 billion rands has only been dispersed. And most businesses are saying that they can't see themselves paying back this money in time because the economy is not doing so well. What do you say to that when it comes to businesses that actually are not actually confident about the future and therefore are not taking up this particular offer of a relief scheme? And secondly, when it comes to spectrum, it's one of those structural reforms that we have mentioned many a time. And we have said that it's been said that we need to actually auction a spectrum, but as we heard a couple of days ago, that is only going to take place next year. Is that soon enough? Are we fast enough as a country to actually deal and mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy?
And will it actually even happen, because the postponements have been arduous?
Well, let's start with the loan guarantee scheme. It's called comfort. If comfort at all, it's actually, quite frankly, annoying when people advance reasoning that people are refusing to take up. I could give you a whole list of black businesses out there who are saying, please give us the money. We know what to do with it. If you have got governance requirements, we'll tick the box and implement. We just need the money. We need to employ. We need to get back into business. But because commercial banks in this country have a terrible track record when it comes to doing business with black business, hence this terrible outcome. Commercial banks in this country have got a terrible track record in doing business with SMMEs. Quite frankly, commercial banks are very comfortable in lending to large multinationals who have got strong balance sheets to guarantee the advanced lending. They are very happy to advance lending to parastatals because they are secured by national treasury. Those low-hanging fruits, that easy money, has made them very fat and lazy. The truth of the matter is thousands of businesses, black and white, small businesses who are saying, we just want access to working capital, want to place orders for raw materials, want to get back into production, we are not trusted by suppliers, so we need to have cash so that we can pay on delivery. That money from the banks becomes very critical. So quite frankly, it's a lame excuse to say it's not being taken up because people are reluctant. How are they going to pay back the money? No, it's not true. It's not fair. The fact is that structurally, commercial banks have not mastered the art of advancing lending to SMEs. That's why we had many schemes, Mzansi account, financial services charter that encourages them. But they seem to be less reluctant to move away from their comfort zone, lending to parastatals, as well as lending to multinationals who are domiciled out there in London or Australia. So that's my posit, quite frankly. I'm sorry, the next question was related to what aspect specifically?
Spectrum, Mr. Zungu. Spectrum, it's been announced that next year will be the date, sometime this time next year, it's going to take us a year to actually auction spectrum, and we know how important it is for competition in the telecom space.
Yes, thanks for that question. Look, we cannot give or cast doubts on the industry. But one has got a very, very strong suspicion that the main players in the industry are just too powerful in terms of their lobbying capacity. And ICASA has tended to be very lightweight in terms of skills and capabilities, not only to ward off the strong lobbyists and industry players, but in terms of just standing their ground and say, this is what we want and this is when we're going to do it. And hence, you'll find major players, whether in the telecom space or in the broadcasting space, basically you must do it this way, you must not do it that way, and with threatening to take you to court, which will force further delay because you are not clear about what you want. And unfortunately, the end loser to that is the South African consumer, who continues to see little competition in areas that matter, whether it's broadcasting or it's in cellular telephony, because there's no spectrum. And those who are oligopolies in those spaces continue to milk it, despite rulings by powers that be that lower the cost of data, but they find a way of clawing back in one way or the other. So it's very important that the ICASA must have the will to stand ground and to put South African people first, to put South African consumers first, rather than pandering to the interests of dominant players in the space. 1 year down the line, let's hope it's going to happen, but it's too late. Because you can see, for example, digital migration has not happened almost a decade after it was meant to be. So the issue of a wholesale open access network, which will give access to new players in this very lucrative space, some people have called it the new gold mine, the new gold rush. It's got to happen. It's going to be the next empowering exercise for South Africa, and especially for consumer.
And as you say, it's a matter of when will it happen. It all looks great on paper, as you're saying, Mr. Zungu, but is it going to be practical? Is it really going to happen? And that is where the meat of it all is. But we thank you so much for your insight and your input today. Very much appreciated, and great chatting to you once again.